Representation matters. But as indigenous Chicano people, we can't just sit back and wait for mainstream media outlets to make it happen for us. And nor should we. We started the Tales from Atlantis podcast because we believe that it is imperative for Chicanos, Chicanas, and Chicanx people to produce our own media and tell our own stories. And the way we choose to do this is by using Buzzsprout to host the podcast. Buzzsprout is by far the easiest and best way to launch a professional podcast. You'll get a podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and much more. To start your own podcast and get a $20 Amazon gift card, follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you and helps support the show. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast. Now, on with the show.
You must excuse me. I've grown quite weary.
This hasn't been easy, I know. But you've learned a lesson. A lesson in honesty. Honesty to yourself and honesty to others. That lesson will stand you in good stead all your life.
I think we've all learned a good lesson. I've always heard that honesty is the best policy. Now I'm catching on to why that's so, and 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 why that's so.
Yale and welcome to Tales from Atlantis, the show where we explore Mesoamerican pseudohistory, New Age nonsense, and other stories of adventure. We are your hosts, Kurly Tlapoyawa
and Ruben Arellano, also known as Tlacatecat.
One of the hallmarks of New Age movements associated with Mesoamerica, along with the poorly named Mayanism movement, is the crystal skull. Now, there are many who think that these skulls were carved thousands or even tens of thousands of years ago by ancient Mesoamerican civilizations. Others think that they may be relics from the legendary lost continent of Atlantis, or proof that extraterrestrials visited the Aztecs sometime before the Spanish invasion. As author Joshua Shapiro, who co-wrote Mysteries of the Crystal Skulls Revealed, states, "We believe the crystal skulls are a form of computer which are able to record energy and vibration that occur around them," he writes. "The skull will pictorially replay all events or images of the people who have come into contact with them, i.e., they contain the history of the world." Which is, a bunch of bullshit. All of the crystal skulls, or most of the crystal skulls, are believed to originate from Mexico and Central America. But where do these skulls actually come from? How were they manufactured? And what purpose do they serve within the New Age community? Spoiler alert, it's almost always money. Well, joining me today is author and researcher Benjamin Radford. Ben is the deputy editor of Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine, a research fellow with the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, and a member of the American Folklore Society. Ben has authored, co-authored, or edited over 20 books and thousands of articles on a wide variety of topics, including urban legends, the paranormal, critical thinking, and media literacy. He is also the co-founder and co-host of two podcasts, Monster Talk from 2009 to 2012, and currently the co-host of the podcast Squaring the Strange, which has run from 2017 to the present. If you're interested in the kind of topics we discuss on this podcast, I highly encourage you to check out Squaring the Strange. So, dear listeners, join me in welcoming Benjamin Radford to the show. How are you doing, man?
Doing great, Kurly. I just the way you phrased it, I'm excited about this myself, and I already know this shit. So it's cool.
And you're the expert.
And I'm the expert. Well, the way you see the gravitas you bring into it, it's just awesome.
So, the crystal skulls, and admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about the crystal skulls other than leading up to the 2012 whole New Age movement revolving 2012. We had a lot of alleged Maya elders coming out and hawking their wares, and Mesoamerican elders presenting these crystal skulls to the world, saying, you know, this is going to be part of this cosmic convergence. And it always rung very untrue to me, the way that, one, that these guys were actually Maya elders, and two, that these crystal skulls were somehow part of a, this worldwide, well, not even worldwide, but like this intergalactic, synchronous event that was going to take place on 2012. So why don't you fill us in, Mr. Radford, on the crystal skulls?
Sure. This is actually one of my favorite investigations because it's multifaceted. It's got a connection here in New Mexico. In fact, in my book, Mysterious New Mexico, I have a chapter on it. So I'll be sort of working from that in terms of the structure. Anyway, let's begin with the New Age stuff, as you mentioned, right? So why crystal and why skulls? Well, crystal, because as you mentioned, crystals are sort of inherent in New Age beliefs, right? It's vibrations, it's healing, it's chakras. It's, if you spent any time in Sedona, you can't throw a dead cat without hitting a crystal somewhere. So of all the possible materials that a skull could be made from, crystal is obviously one of the ones that's going to have the most resonance with New Agers who are just like, oh, crystals, it's got to do something.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And of course, in terms of why, and of course, there's many different types of crystals. There's reticulated crystals, there's cloudy crystals, there's a wide variety. But the ones that, of course, evoke the most interest and fascination are clear ones. Right, because it's you're sort of seeing right through it, you're seeing vision, that sort of thing. And probably the best known ones are probably from the Indiana Jones film, right? The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull,
the bad Indiana Jones film,
not one of the better ones, absolutely. These are the crystal skulls we're talking about. When Spielberg and Lucas were pulling these things together, like there we go. And then we also have sort of bringing in another tangent. We have Dan Aykroyd's crystal skull, and in fact,
that's right. He even has is it a vodka or
it is a vodka? And I'm holding up some of it right now. It's full, so don't get me wrong. But this is Crystal Head vodka, and Dan is, as of course, Canadian. And so it is made from iceberg water from Newfoundland.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure it's worth the extra cost, but yeah, I guess it's decent vodka or something. But that's so there's Indiana Jones, and everybody knows, again, not the great Indiana Jones. On this quest for the crystal skulls, you've got Dan's crystal skull, and in the British Museum, in downtown London, there is a crystal skull, and it is really cool. So if you're ever in the British Museum, go check it out.
I was at the British National Museum, and I completely forgot that there was a crystal skull there. I should have. Well, we were only there for a day, and that museum is massive. So
yeah. I'm not blaming anybody if you didn't get a chance to go see it.
I wish I would have, though.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's easy to sort of miss because it's sort of small and sort of off to the side. But for somebody like me who has researched it, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like everyone else is looking at this and that. I'm like, there's a really cool thing over here. But anyway, so crystal skulls are real. There are about fewer than a half dozen in the world that are of significance in terms of size and things like that. The British Museum skull being the most accessible. And where you can go take a look at it. And so really the story of the crystal skulls is sort of two parallel versions. So I'm going to begin with the one where there's actually a connection to New Mexico and Colorado. And this is a case that I personally investigated, and I won't spoil it. I'll just leave it at that. So basically, what happened was that in 1995, the story goes that in the San Luis Valley, northern New Mexico and southern Colorado, there was a woman who was a woman named Dana, also. Yes, her name was Dana. And I'm just sort of going by my notes here. And so she'd seen this thing, and she was out there on her ranch, and she was ATV and sort of in the middle of nowhere. And she noticed something on the ground that sort of caught her eye. And a farmhand, a ranch hand who was with her, went out to go see what it was, and he brought back this strange-looking crystal skull. And in fact, I have a replica of it right here. And it's not actually crystal, and it's not actually a skull, but we'll get to that.
It's not very big either.
It's not very big either. That's another important thing. It's about as big as my fist. It's probably 10, 12 pounds or so. But it's clearly a stylized skull, and this is what she found. And so she finds this thing and is immediately taken with it, and she's just like, again, this is the middle of nowhere. This is out in the desert, and it's part of her ranch there, and she just can't figure out why in the world would this weird looking glass crystal skull thing be out there, just middle of nowhere. So she sort of becomes enchanted with this, and starts looking for any. There's no markings on it. There's no name on it. It's just this weird looking thing. It's about 6 inches high, and it appears to be made out of molten glass. And it's sort of asymmetrical, which is kind of odd. And so she began looking at this and just sort of basically it was speaking to her. And she didn't know, again, just the strangest thing, just out the middle of nowhere. And so she took it in, and so she went online and trying to figure out, okay, well, it's clearly glass, but it certainly could be mistaken for crystal if you don't look too hard at it. So she Googles crystal skull, and she discovers the best known crystal skull in the world, which is of course the Mitchell Hedges skull.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the things take a turn, and that function, that whole idea of trying to answer questions through Google searches. As you know, it's a time-honored myth tradition, and frankly, it's the result. The same process happens with chupacabras, right? Somebody sees, found a dead thing on my ranch. What is it? I don't know. Google dead thing on ranch. Must be a chupacabra.
Right.
What else could it be, right? So there's this notion that if we don't know where it is, we'll just slap a label on it, and even if it's something that's clearly not. Now the Mitchell Hedges skull has a really interesting history to it, and it was described by Arthur C. Clarke, who called it the weirdest gem in the world. And it's about 5 inches high, about 5 inches wide, and nearly 8 inches long. It weighs about 11.5 pounds. And it's a single piece of crystal, and it's a remarkable large crystal skull. And again, this is the best known crystal skull in the world, and of course, this is what Dana or Donna, she goes by either name, found when she was looking for this. So she finds this thing, and she attaches. Number one, it's weird, and she assumes there's some sort of weird, new agey thing going on, and then she brings in the best known crystal skull there. So the history of it's also known as the skull of doom, because of course it is, right? It's not the skull of happiness. It's not the skull of libations. It's the skull of doom.
That's a good name.
Right? Yeah, what the hell? I'll buy it, right? Arthur C. Clarke had it on his show and wherever else. So here's the thing. So again, this has a fascinating story in and of itself. So basically, the story of where the Mitchell Hedges skull comes in was it was allegedly found, and again I'll get to that in a second, by a man named F.A. Mike Mitchell Hedges, and it was allegedly found in 1927 in Lubantun, ruined Mayan city, formerly British Honduras, now Belize. And the story goes that Mitchell Hedges was there, and he's this really weird, sketchy, early 20th century dashing figure. He sort of fancied himself a sort of proto Indiana Jones. When you start looking into some of his history, Joe Nichols done some stuff on it. Daniel Loxton did as well. It quickly becomes sketchy. I know this is going to be a shock to you, but
yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of these earlier like archaeologists, during like the birth of archaeology, of American archaeology, a lot of these guys were super sketchy.
Yes,
and almost driven by, pseudo archaeology, and the quest for these legendary lost cities and stuff is kind of what drove a lot of the industry back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we can get into looting. I mean, there's all sorts of sketchy angles to it. In this case, so again, there's actually a couple different stories. The main story is that it wasn't Mike Mitchell Hedges himself, but his daughter Anna, who found it on her 17th birthday of all days.
Nice.
And because why wouldn't it be, right? It's a birthday gift from the ancient Mayans. So he's there, and the story is that young Anna is accompanying her father, who's doing these dashing, globe-trotting things, raiding ruins and whatnot. And she said that she was one of several kids on the site, and she sort of had this calling, and she sort of looked into this into one of these ruins and saw a blinding light deep inside a pyramid. And she was just like, oh, what is that? This is the strangest thing. And her father, apparently having no compunctions about it, tied a rope to his plucky little daughter, lowered her into this. And this is straight out of a Indiana Jones.
Yeah, right. This is like an Amazing Stories issue.
Exactly. So she, this is choose your own adventure. So she goes down, and you can just picture her, this brave 17-year-old girl being lowered deeper and deeper into this previously unexplored somehow temple deep in there, and of course there's snakes, spiders, scorpions, God knows what. Anyway, so she gets lowered down, and so she sees what it was that was drawing her attention, and it turns out to be the skull of doom.
Nice.
Yes, of course. So she picks it up, and she's of course terrified because it's near complete darkness and there's terrible things all around. So they quickly pull her up, and she says that she goes on top of the pyramid and she holds up the skull, and of course all the Mayan children, because of course they do, fall to their knees and worship this.
Oh my God!
I know.
She really said this is part of the story.
That's I'm not making this up. This is part of the story. So yeah, of course it has to be this whole Eurocentric. The white savior comes in and rediscovers this ancient object of magic. So this is allegedly the origin of the crystal skull. And so Mitchell Hedges wrote about this skull in his 1954 autobiography, Danger, My Ally. Now, I'll give him credit. Danger, My Ally is a cool title.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I wouldn't mind writing a book, Danger, My Ally. So he can coin a good phrase. And he claims in this autobiography that the skull was at least 3,600 years old. Not clear how he came up with the number.
Yeah, how did he date that?
Well, it's, according to legend, it was used by the high priest of the Maya when performing esoteric rites.
Oh, of course it was.
Of course it was. What
else would it be there?
Right, clearly, right? So just waiting for a plucky 17-year-old to see this. So the story is that it has all these magic abilities, and also that it can transfer knowledge. And so one of the stories, again, without attribution, he just sort of putting this out there because, he knows this, is that, according to legend, they say that that the skull was used to transfer knowledge between generations. So, for example, a shaman or priest who was dying of old age or disease or what have you would pick a young acolyte and transfer his knowledge into the skull, which would then be transferred into the acolyte in a whole ceremony, and the old man's knowledge would transfer into this crystal skull.
So rather than passing knowledge generation to generation, mouth to ear,
no, it's
teaching young people these things
that's
to
inefficient.
Respect their culture. Yeah, it's so inefficient. You just download it all to this. No, you upload it to this crystal skull, and then the next person downloads that information, and it's all so convenient.
Yeah, it works out. It works out well for everybody. So this is the information that Donna, I think her name is Coach or Coch, COCH, came across when she's trying to figure out what is this weird skull that she found. And so there's been a cottage industry in crystal skulls because, of course, there has. So there's lots.
So was the Mitchell Hedges the first?
It was one of the first and best known ones, right? So there's the British Museum skull, there's the Mitchell Hedges skull, and there are one or two other ones that are smaller, but those are the two marquee ones.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with all these crystal skulls, there is this sort of mystique about crystals and vibrations and visions and all these sorts of things. And so as what would happen with the San Luis skull, the Mitchell Hedges skull was said to have all these sorts of abilities. So you had a variety of crystal experts, because crystal skull experts, right? They got their diploma. Exactly. So there's a crystal skull expert by the name of Frank Dorland, who studied the skull for 6 years, which, to be fair, is a long time to study a skull. Mm-hmm. And he concluded that it, in fact, had mysterious powers. Among them, I'll just have a quote here. It sometimes changed color or filled with a cottony haze. It produced an elusive perfume and strange tinkling sounds. Images of mountains, temples, and objects appeared within it, and then an aura once surrounded it for several minutes. And there were all sorts of stories, so all sorts of legends came up with it. So, anytime you have a cursed object, right? You see this in folklore, you see this in legends. You have some object of power, Lord of the Rings. Lots of stories come up with this, right? So you have this powerful cursed / blessed object, and one of the stories about it was that it could kill instantly, right? So in addition to be able to doing the downloading knowledge thing, just by focusing, or it didn't come with instructions, obviously, because that would have been useful, but there was supposed to be some way in which you could just sort of point it at somebody, and
wow. If only the Maya had some sort of magical killing weapon when the Spaniards invaded, one would think that they would have used it.
You would right. Well, to be fair, they were waiting for a 17-year-old white girl to find this thing deep in the...
Yeah, I mean...
It's all part of the prophecy. Come on, Kurly, you know this. So now, again, the most of the claims surrounding crystal skulls, as you can imagine, are pretty sketchy and dubious, and it's just sort of this amorphous stuff. However, in the case of the Mitchell Hedges skull, it was subjected to a couple of tests. So there is at least a veneer of scientific investigation into this. So in 1970, researcher Frank Dorland, who I just quoted a second ago, took this skull to Hewlett Packard Laboratories for analysis. And I'll just read this is a quote from one of Dorland's books. He says, another highly puzzling detail was that no matter what temperature the researchers subjected the Mitchell Hedges skull to, it always remained at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Not 68, not 72. This is remarkable. All these findings were so astounding that one of the crystallographers at Hewlett Packard was quoted as saying, "The damn thing simply shouldn't be." I'm just, this should not exist. My science is fails in comparison to your legend, sir. You have me. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
You've bested my science.
You've bested my science. How dare you,
with your
sir?
magic.
So, and there was another, as you know, a lot of these New Agers, they love throwing out these dates, right? It's this, it's that, 70 degrees. It was 3,600 years old, because of course it was. In this particular case, the Mitchell Hedges skull was said to have required an estimated 300 man-years of effort to create. Which is kind of interesting. And so this, the idea was that, if it was made using sand and water, which would be one way to create exactly such a skull. And so again, so if someone took a big chunk of crystal and using only sand and water, which would of course would be available before say 1850s or so, then in terms of lapidary tools, whatever else, then this is what it would take. So this makes it all the more official, right? Because you have Hewlett Packard presumably authenticating this, saying this thing shouldn't be, and I don't know what this is. So of course the mystery mongers are quoting, in some cases misquoting, of course, the scientists who just are beside themselves and tearing out their hair because their science has failed in the face of this piece of quartz. Crystal. So again, you had amid these early investigations, these sort of somewhat scientific investigations in the early 70s, you had people who were, of course, going with it, right? So the skull was swimming around because it's privately owned, right? So that one's not in the British Museum, so you can make money on it. You can rent it out. You can charge people to be in its presence, and they did.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Yes. So it was advertised and circulated around. So New Agers would come to pray in the presence of the Mitchell Hedges skull. It was said to provide important information to healers and scientists around the world. And the story was that if the skull ever fell into the wrong hands, depending on how one interprets that phrase, it was already in the wrong hands, that it would self-destruct. It would destroy itself in some sort of combustible, who the hell knows? Anyway, I know, it's crazy stuff, right? So, and this is really when the cottage industry of crystal skull marketing came into the fore in the 1970s and 80s, when you had the Mitchell Hedges skull circulating around. Of course, again, the British Museum one was already in the museum, but there were a couple others floating around. So people
P.T. Barnum really missed his
he missed his calling.
Yeah, with this one, man, could you imagine if these had been around during his circus? He could have had this stuff going from town to town, just taking advantage of people. Right,
next to the Fiji mermaid and the
lost Aztec, the lost Aztec children.
Right. So again, in terms of the Mitchell Hedges skull, so you had people who were reporting their own personal experiences with the skulls. And again, this is pretty common in the paranormal, right? Someone said they have the experience at a haunted house. They have an experience with a particular psychic. They have, looking for Bigfoot, whatever. So as in those cases, you have in fact, many people who were actually giving seminars and writing books and giving, paid lectures, well, you haven't been fortunate enough to be in the presence of this crystal skull. I have. Here's a photo of me with it. Let me tell you what important knowledge I've gained from having this in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm shocked that like straight religions didn't
latch out of this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I'll give you a sample of some of the things that would come from these psychics who were in the presence of this. So one skull researcher by the name of Nick Nocerino said that he received visions of the skull, including pictures of several highly civilized societies. One that lives underwater. Wonder what that could be. Of course, Atlantis makes its way in there, right? Another one lives inside the earth, right? So we got Atlantis, we got the Hollow Earthers.
Hollow Earth.
Yeah, and the third one comes from some other planet. And so basically, this guy Nocerino, who again talked about it, he wrote a book on it, on his impressions of being in the same room. I'm guessing he was high on something. I don't really know. But anyway, he's just and of course, to the average New Ager, they're like, ooh.
Yeah, this is legit.
This is legit. This guy wrote a book on this. This is the famous skull. He's been in its presence. He must have
whispered in his ear. It whispered, "Take all their money."
Exactly. But it gets better. So let me tell you my favorite. So my favorite, and when I was researching this, I just had a ball because there's just so much bullshit here. It's hard to sort of like pack it in. So one of my favorite stories of psychics who told their visions of being in the presence of the Mitchell Hedges skull was a woman named Sandra Bowen, and she spent nearly a month communicating with it. Now, I'm not sure if that was a one-way or two-way communication, but she said that she communicated with it with the help of two extraterrestrial friends.
That's nice.
Well, their friends were named Akbar and Jehoshaphat. I shit you not. So Sandra.
You lie, sir.
So Sandra
Two
Bowen,
aliens named Akbar and Jehoshaphat helped me talk to this crystal skull.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense.
It all fits, dude. So what important information? You're probably wondering, right? Like, Ben, so what important, valuable to humankind information did this crystal skull impart to amazing psychic medium Sandy Bowen? One of the first things that the skull told her is its favorite color, which is purple.
Well, that's valuable information.
So there's that. So it's good to know that Sandy Bowen says that the Mitchell Hedges skull's favorite color is purple.
Yeah, she's like, impart to me the great wisdom, oh Mitchell Hedges skull. And the skull's like, I love Prince.
It says, yeah.
Well, at least the skull had good taste in music.
Well, there's that, right? So, but here's the thing. So as it turns out, we were wrong. So the scientists, the skeptics, the other people that thought one particular thing about the skull, they all got it wrong. No. Sandy Bowen has the inside scoop, thanks to Akbar. I'm not sure about Jehoshaphat, but whatever. Anyway, so the story is that not only is its favorite color purple, but also has several skull brothers and sisters.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So now, so our buddy Dan Aykroyd took this and ran with it. So if you buy, or probably if you consume his Crystal Head vodka, if you go to his website, at least as of the time I was researching this, there's a couple pages on this, right? And it's like, well, you should buy my vodka because blah, blah, blah. And by the way, here's the story of the Crystal Skulls. And as you know, Dan is a little woo.
Oh, yeah. Well, a little. Have you heard the guy talk?
Well, although to be fair, his father wrote a really good book on ghosts, Peter Ackroyd. It's not as skeptical as I would like, but if anyone's interested, check out Peter Ackroyd's book on ghosts. Anyway, so according to Sandra Bowen, the crystal skull is actually.
Wait, I just got to ask: was his dad mad that Dan wrote a movie about busting ghosts? Was he just like, here's what I think you're ghosts, Dad?
There you go. Right? I didn't get into that, but well, you're more in the movie business than I am, so you're going to see Dan sooner than I will.
I'll ask.
So apparently, the Mitchell Hedges skull is actually a high priestess of Atlantis' skull by the name of Shatritra. So
wait, what?
Shatritra. So
Shatritra.
It looks like it's just a carved thing. It's not. It's literally the skull of an Atlantean princess, who, with the help of space beings, this is a direct quote, with the help of space beings, maybe even including Akbar and Jossa, we don't know, using the power of their minds and laser beams emanating from their eyes, crystallized her skull, dude.
So this is the actual skull of an Atlantean queen or princess?
This would be no. This is a priestess.
Priestess. Sorry.
Hey, dude, have some respect, man. They're different. Okay.
Well, we don't know how Atlantis was organized. Like, was it a theocracy? I mean, the queen could have been the priestess. We need to ask the skull.
Well,
about the social organization
we do
and cultural ecology of Atlantis.
That'll clear this shit up, man. I don't know why you're bothering out there in the field, sweating your ass off. Dude, talk to the skulls, Kurly. You're on the wrong track here, man.
Yeah, I need to get on the crystal skull business.
Clearly. Anyway, so enough of the Mitchell Hedges skull. So I want to lay it out for you. So again, this is the information that Donna Koch was listening and reading when she was trying to figure out what the hell is this weird glass/crystal skull looking thing that she found in the middle of nowhere in southern Colorado. So as with the more famous Mitchell Hedges skull, she began attributing unexplained powers to it. She said that, for example, now it wasn't killing people as far as she knew, but she said, for example, that it was all clean and shiny, and that when she found it, it didn't have. She said that it doesn't get dirty. So there's that. I guess it's useful for cleaning houses. It's a self-dusting. I don't really know. And at one point, the Mitchell Hedges skull came to Albuquerque. I think in the mid 1990s, and it was brought in a bowling ball bag.
Of course, that's what you do. That's how you treat the skull of the high priestess of Atlantis.
Exactly. This is.
What are we going to put it in? I don't know. I got a bowling ball bag.
Well, dude, the bowling ball bag was probably purple, so it's all cool. It's all cool, dude. So here's what happened, right? So she's looking online, Googling it, and Professor Google. And so soon this woman Donna starts telling people about this mysterious weird crystal skull that she found. And she's like, oh, this is the strangest thing, and it's I don't know what it is, but look online, you'll see it's just like these other ones. And so soon after she took the skull home and began telling people about it, other people reported weird things going on. So, for example, some people said that they were scared of it. So she's showing them this weird looking skull thing, and people are like freaking out about it. And she's telling these whole stories, and there's that famous skull, and it was said to kill people, and maybe this is one of its sister skulls.
Yeah, maybe this is one just like it. Look into its eyes.
Right? Well, if the Mitchell Hedges is the priestess, this is like the priestess's like younger cousin who's a little slow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know what's going on. But so she began sort of not only telling other people about the skull, and it soon got notoriety, right? Because people are like, "Oh my God, there's this famous skull," and of course, the Mitchell Hedges. There's only one of that prominence, and it was touring around for a while. But when you're told there's another skull equally mysterious, or at least so it seemed, found in southern Colorado, northern New Mexico, of course people are going to be excited. So,
did the two skulls ever meet? Like, did she ever take?
I don't know. Not that
her skull.
It'd be cool in
Bummer.
Conversation between the two skulls.
Yeah.
So you like purple, huh? Yeah, but
what's your favorite color? Death.
I'm a Libra. How are you? So as with the Skull of Doom, psychics flocked to this thing because, of course, they did. And so you had people coming along, and just everywhere, right? So you had people attributing it to Native Americans because, of course, it was found in the Southwest. Aztec, Maya, Navajo. I mean, take your pick. So you had these, and then you also had then of course it was shown in Sedona, because of course it was. So
yeah. The what are they? The vortexes.
The vortexes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Donna takes this to Sedona, and it goes great guns, right? So people are like, "Oh my God, we have the skull here! Not the cool skull, but the B movie version of the skull. Come out and check it out." So the psychics are coming by, and people would come and meditate with the skull. And she was told, again, psychics were coming to her and saying, this I'm feeling power, just like these other crystal skulls. It has a sense of aura. One person told her that she thought that the skull had actually cursed them. Like, I think there was a flat tire, like a blowout. Somebody hit his head with a hammer, which I thought kind of funny. but no,
damn skull.
Right, I'm swinging my ball peen around. Next thing I know, I'm laid out. Like, well, dude. But yeah,
now, I assume that this was all for a fee that she was charging people.
Well, she yes and no. It depends. So there were times when she was basically just doing it for attention, right? Because people were, people were coming all around and having a good time with it, and so she would actually keep it hidden. So there'd be time people would come out, and want to be near it. So again, she's charging psychics $100 an hour to be in the same room with the thing. So she's not going to kill the golden calf. So she claimed that she was offered $20,000 for it by a paranormal collector in Washington, and a guy named Chris O'Brien wrote a book. I'm forgetting the title of it, but he did actually a pretty good chapter on it. And so he sort of lays out some of this stuff. And so Donna she didn't know what to do with it. It was obviously valuable and certainly generating money, and perhaps could have other powers. But again, she thought it was cursed. And so then the question is, okay, well, you have people coming by and spitting more and more stories about it and relating their personal experiences with it, probably under the influence of God knows what. And so then the question is, okay, Donna, dial it back a second. What is this, right? So this is not the famous Mitchell Hedges skull, obviously. And so she actually began doing a little bit of due diligence, a bit belatedly, I might add. But at some point, people are saying, well, hold on here, right? Donna, this is not, first of all, let's just begin with the obvious thing. It's not crystal. It's glass. It's obviously glass. I'm holding it in my hand. It's clearly glass. There's nothing else that could be but glass. I know glass. I'm wearing glasses. I've used glasses since I was 2. This is glass, folks, not crystal. But whatever.
I'm shocked that none of the psychics were able to sense that it was glass.
Right? I mean,
I'm stunned.
Well, they got their diploma from, God knows where.
Trump University.
Trump University. But here's the thing, right? So this is so when you start sort of chipping away at this, then it sort of comes apart in layers, right? Because here's the problem, right? Even though it's obviously glass, you don't want to tell people that. Why? Because, as I mentioned, glass doesn't have the same cachet among New Agers, right?
Yeah, you don't want to go look at the famous glass skull of the San Luis Valley. You want a goddamn crystal skull.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So even though everybody, obviously, I assume, unless they're totally idiots, which, to be fair, is a logical assumption in many of these cases, they must have known it was glass. But so they probably is like, well, we'll just call it crystal because it's close enough. So again, that's the problem with it. It's like, okay, well, it's not that, but then at the same time, what the hell is it, right? It's glass. Why is someone making a glass skull, and why would it be out in the middle of nowhere on this ranch in southern Colorado? So finally, somebody got the idea to take it to the Denver Museum of Natural History, and said, hey, what can you tell us about this? And of course, their first answer is, well, it's not crystal. Like, okay, fine. Okay, it's not crystal.
That's a great museum, by the way. Right. Shout out to the Denver Museum of Natural History, because that's a dope museum.
It is. I've been there. It's cool. So, so they looked at it, and I would love to have been a fly on the wall. I would love to be in the room when they're like, all right, dude, who's going to tell her? Okay. It would be one of those, like, people dying inside videos you see on YouTube. This needed to be recorded for that.
Yeah, just the reaction.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, okay, well, Donna, again, not crystal, not actually a skull, obviously. Probably not the crystallized skull created by laser beams from eyes from aliens. I don't care what Akbar said. Joseph's a liar anyway, so don't mind him.
Yeah, you can't trust him.
He's sketchy as all hell. So at some point, the answer came to be that, well, we know who made this. And I know who made it, and I actually talked to the guy who made it. His name was Brad Chavez, and he's a Denver glassblower. So this is where the story evaporates, like a house of cards.
Yeah, it just disintegrates.
It just in a spectacular way that I love. So
delicious.
So delicious. So as it turns out, this skull, and again, this is actually the one I'm holding. For you who are just listening, out watching, this isn't going to help you, but take my word for it. I'm holding it up. This is actually made by Brad. I bought one from that same batch. So I have one made by him that's virtually identical to the one that Donna found. The one that by the way, I should add, she turned down $20,000 for. I'll just leave that there. So I contact.
Bad move, Ripley.
I contact this guy Brad, again, who's a Denver glassblower, and his work is known throughout the region, and he would actually come to Albuquerque and other places to sell these glass skulls for Day of the Dead.
Sweet.
Yeah, and so he'd go to the different fairs, and there was basically sort of different paperweights. And so I asked him about that. I said, well, so you made this allegedly miraculous magical skull. He's like, yeah, I've been making them for years. He said the one that she found was about half size. He said it was, quote, really awful for one of my paperweights. The mouth went wrong, so it's technically one of my seconds.
Damn.
So this is awkward, right? Because Donna's ancient, mysterious, magical crystal skull was neither ancient, nor mysterious, nor magical, nor crystal.
It was a glass paperweight.
Glass paperweight, yeah.
That people paid $100 an hour to sit in the presence of.
Right, and so
this is how you get Donald Trump as president, folks.
Pay close attention, guys. This is how this works. So, but then we'll hold on here, right? So let's backtrack a second. So we now know what the true origin of this is. And by the way, I should add, in terms of, so again, there's a slight mystery. It's like, why was it out there? And the truth is...
what the hell was this thing doing just sitting out in the middle of nowhere?
Okay, so here's the thing. So, and it's a little bit tragic, but basically, Chavez owned the property next to Donna's property out in the plains. And so he actually put it on his property to mark where he was going to build his future home. With his wife, who unfortunately died soon thereafter. So it was sort of a tragic thing. He didn't end up building the house, as I understand it.
Yeah, that sucks.
Because she died soon thereafter. But yeah, so this was left on his own property, I might add, as a marker, saying one day we're going to come back here, and where I leave this seconds paperweight, we're going to put the house here.
That's where the dream house is gone.
That's where the dream house is gone. So that's the answer. That's why it was out there. Now, when you know the true story behind it, it's interesting. I was like, wow, it makes sense in retrospect.
Well, yeah. Well, the truth is always more interesting than the bullshit.
Right. So Chavez, so I asked him about, I was like, well, dude, what do you make of your defective paperweight drawing people from across the country to be in its presence? And he was like, I don't even, he was just bemused by the whole thing, but he was also irritated because he, and also this guy, Chris O'Brien, who wrote, I think the book was titled The Mysterious Valley. They both assured me, and I didn't speak to Donna herself. I tried to get a hold of her. She wanted nothing to do with me. I can figure out why.
Shocking.
Right. Yeah, she Googled me. She's like, I got nothing to say to this dude.
Or maybe you shouldn't have left in the voicemail, I want to talk to you about your bullshit paperweight that you're charging people to look at.
Right. I could have phrased that more delicately. You're right. I'll work on that. But again, it doesn't have his name on it. It doesn't have a mark on it. Because again, he wasn't going to sell it because it was a rejection. It was just, so that's, any other object of art, which this ostensibly was, might have something on it, but in this case, it didn't bother. But so Brad and Chris O'Brien, they're pretty harsh on Donna, and probably rightfully so, because they're pretty sure, and again, I didn't talk to her myself, but they're pretty certain that she knew early on that this was not mysterious. She knew who it was, because by the museum told her, like, this is a glass paperweight. It's probably done by this guy, Brad Chavez, who, by the way, is your neighbor on the property, FYI. And it all makes sense, right? But nonetheless, she just kept going because, right?
Well, yeah, at that point, you don't want to punch your
you don't want to kill the
mouth, right?
Exactly. So that's basically the story of the San Luis Valley, the Valley Skull. So eventually she quit. I think, as I recall, it's been a while since I wrote the chapter. I think somebody threatened to sue her if she didn't.
Really?
Well, it was his. I mean, frankly, it's theft. I mean, for one thing. I mean, it's his property. It may have been. So
they were on his property. It didn't get sheet washed.
No.
Onto her property.
No, apparently it was his property. It was where it was going to. Now, again, I didn't go out to exactly where it was, but my understanding is that it was on his property. Again, there's nothing there, but this is where the future home was. So again, she kept milking this sacred cow crystal skull for all it's worth, and finally, I think, sort of let it fade away. Not wanting, of course, to tell everybody, no refunds. That's the first thing. No refunds.
Yeah, right.
That was her big thing. Was okay. Well, she made her money. She probably just embarrassed by it because it's blowing up in her face, and she's probably pissed off that I wrote about it in my book, and that's just too bad. So that was the end of San Luis. But let me return for a second to bookend this with the story of the crystal, the skull of doom, the Betcha Hedges skull. So, as I mentioned, there was various claims made about the skull, including, as you'll recall, that it stays at 70 degrees no matter what, right? So you put it in a volcano, 70 degrees. Put it in an oven, 70 degrees. Put it in the freezer, 70 degrees. And of course, there's the claim that it would take all these man hours or 360 man years to create this. So as it turns out, and I'll spare you all the details, but basically, as it turns out, the truth is that there's a couple different stories emerged. So again, the main story is that Anna Mitchell Hedges found this on her 17th birthday at Lubantun with her father. In one of his later books, Mitchell Hedges actually said that he himself found it. He's like, I don't know what she said, but I found this. Bring it to me. So
fishy.
Yeah, a little sketchy there. Like, well, hold on, which one of you found it? Because there's something sketchy here. So as it turns out, there's actually no evidence that she was at Lubantun at all, much less found this damn thing. So that right there is pretty sketchy. And as it turns out, the claims that it would have taken this long to actually create the thing that part of it is true. So let's be very clear about what the Hewlett-Packard lab said. They said that if this was done using sand and water, it would take 300 years, whatever else. Keep in mind, the operative word is if, right.
That's a very important word in that sentence.
Exactly. Pay attention here. So the story is that, in fact, if it's not done that way, if it was used by reasonably modern lapidary tools, it could take a couple months. So, therein lies the rub. So you have what is a true but misleadingly framed statement by a scientist who's like, well, hold on here. Don't just put the asterisk there.
Yeah, and that never happens, right? Scientists are never misquoted by New Agers in order to advance their personal agendas.
No, that wouldn't happen. So the true story of where the Mitchell Hedges skull came from was that Mitchell Hedges bought it from a collector named Sidney Burney in 1933, and he later sold it to pay a debt. His daughter Anna, who made up the whole story, then bought it after after her father died. So again, we know that we have everything but the receipt. We know who bought it. We know who sold it. He didn't find it in Lubantun or anywhere else. He bought it from a collector, and that was the whole story. And so there's this whole sketchy thing. And as I mentioned, as I sort of alluded to before, Mitchell Hedges was a habitual liar. He was run out of various places. He had basically, right before the law, he was involved in swindles and fraud, and just this, con man through and through. And so he was basically run out of the UK, and found himself in British Honduras at the time, and was there and made a name for himself. So that essentially is the story of the crystal skulls.
I would like to add that I don't know if you've heard of Unbat Min, the fake Maya elder, but back during the 2012 debacle, right? The whole New Age embracing the 2012 phenomena, or the 2012 Maya prophecy that they called it, in Los Angeles, shortly before 2012, in preparation for 2012, I would assume, Hunbat's men came together with a group of other quote-unquote Maya elders and 12 other Maya priests, actually, quote-unquote, to bring all of the crystal skulls together. All of the ones that were available were brought together in a hotel in Los Angeles, so it must have been a raging party. And Unbat's Min was, in fact, it was called the Crystal Skull Festival. So
get your tickets here.
Yeah.
Popcorn and candy at the side.
And Unbat's Min was quoted as saying, "The crystal skulls are not emitting all their information like they did thousands of years ago. But by bringing them together and returning them, to sacred Maya lands, the cycle of time for the return of the Maya cosmic consciousness will have been completed. So, I don't even know if Unbatsmin is still alive, but I do know that he was very big back in the day.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, he was pretty well known. He also claims that the Maya invented yoga, and that Jesus Christ spoke Maya while dying on the cross. There's a lot of fun stuff.
Did he offer like a cassette tape? Like, just listen to this. Listen to this.
And I guess what the point that I want to make is that the Maya, that Mesoamerica as a whole, that indigenous people as a whole have a valid cultural legacy that's full of fascinating, real accomplishments, and a legacy that they've left to, there's 7 to 8 million Maya people alive right now. It's not a dead culture. There are Maya people that remain, and they have a culture that's relevant and that matters. And that all of this talk of, the crystal skulls and, Jesus spoke Maya, all of these fantastical New Age ideas just completely erase and disregard. And it's so disrespectful of the actual people who's they're counting on their legacy. They're couching this bullshit on the legacy of actual people who have actual accomplishments.
Right.
And it's just so disrespectful. It just it angers me so much. And so I want to thank you for taking the time and doing the research, doing the legwork, finding out where this stuff comes from, and just shedding some light on it, because it's important. Because it's like I said, the truth is always way more fascinating and interesting than any bullshit that you could make up.
It really is, and that's one of the reasons.
You can hear my niece in the background.
That's one of the reasons I love the work you do, man. It's like you're out there, you're hardcore, you're setting records straight, and we need more of that, and that's awesome. And that's again, this story was especially interesting to me because of the way that the mythology sort of rolled into each other, right? So she finds this glass paperweight, and she's like, what could it be? Google. Oh, maybe it's related to this other bullshit. And so instead of applying any critical thinking, and who knows? I haven't met her. I don't know whether she would have done it anyway. But it's just interesting to sort of see how these influences and these tendrils go from place to place, and it just sort of nobody bothers to double check anything, and then you just have these these myths pop up.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what I like to say about the truth, Ben Radford? The truth is like medicine. It doesn't always taste good, but it's always good for you. Thank you all for listening to another episode of Tales from Atlantis. I want to apologize. My co-host, Ruben Arellano Tlacatecat, could not be here today, which he was actually upset about because he's a huge fan of yours and he really wanted to be on this episode with you. But he's a college professor and it is finals right now. So he had to administer some tests instead of appearing on our podcast. But I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Ruben Arellano Tlacatecat, and hopefully we'll get you back on and he could meet you then.
Absolutely.
Because, he's a huge fan. Well, thank you for coming on. It was a good show. It was a great conversation. And Timo Itase.
Tell us about the crystal skulls. How is that? What's happening?
Well, the crystal skulls, again, long time ago, in my same family, a long time ago, the Spanish, they destroyed many crystal skulls. But today it's coming back again because the crystals bring the connection of the cosmic knowledge, and they begin to project again to all the world the crystal knowledge. The crystal knowledge exists in the crystals. So that's one of the reasons begin to appear and appear and appear more and more. It's like coming back again, the teachers. The Mayas, we don't believe somebody's going to come to save us. we believe the crystal skulls can save us.
Thank you for listening to Tales from Atlantis, a project of the Chimali Institute of Mesoamerican Arts. If you enjoy the show, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can do this by visiting talesfromatlantis.com and clicking Support the Podcast. Your continued support will help keep the podcast ad-free and independent. Until next time, Timo Itase.